Coming to you, pre-recorded from Casa de Regis in Culver City, California, it's the Reggie N Regis Podcast!
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on episode 1. My name is Reggie Bobrin. I'm sitting here next to my partner in crime, Regis.
Yes, one name, like Madonna or Cher, but younger and way, way, way less talented.
And today, we will be talking about the coronavirus and how it's affected sports, life in general.
Yeah, exactly. What we want this show to be is a sports-themed podcast for what's timely and relevant in the world of sports. And unless you're a horse racing fan, the coronavirus has pretty much wiped out everything on the sporting calendar for the foreseeable future. So we're going to talk about how that's impacted everything and what the future could look like.
Yeah, exactly. This is an unprecedented event, actually, in my lifetime, and probably most people's lifetime, where a virus has basically kind of taken over the world. I mean, when was the last time something like that, influenza back in the 20s, perhaps?
Yeah, probably some kind of flu that, the bubonic plague 1,000 years ago or something like that.
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking about it a little bit earlier. I remember like the swine flu back in 2009.
2009.
SARS in like 2002. And I mean, you heard about these things, but it was kind of like it was minimal. It was kind of like, oh yeah, I'm aware of it, but it's not really affecting anything.
Exactly. There were news events. Basically, they told you to take better care of yourself. Wash your hands. Don't limit contact with other people. That sort of stuff. But it wasn't to the level that we're seeing today.
Exactly. You see, obviously affecting sports. You see just anything in general. Hospitality, traveling, the Wall Street. Basically, this virus is just, and I think to an extent, if you didn't take it seriously about, let's say, a week ago, and I'm not saying that nobody didn't, but it definitely hit a spot sometime this week.
Specifically, I think for a lot of us, that was Wednesday night.
Yeah.
If you have been living under a rock, Rudy Gobert, who's an all-star player for the Utah Jazz, was diagnosed with the coronavirus seconds before they were about to tip off their game against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And then it was found that one of his teammates, Donovan Mitchell, also had it as well. The irony of this being, Rudy Gobert, who was downplaying this as recently as Monday, we've all seen the video of him touching all the mics, just kind of in an effort to make people feel, less concerned, and he ends up being the one who ends up being diagnosed with it. Yeah,
irony of ironies. Obviously he's put out a statement apologizing for his actions. In retrospect, very reckless, very dangerous. You hear some rumblings about how some of his own teammates in the locker room aren't very, warm to him at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see how that repairs. But then you also hear about a celebrity like Tom Hanks coming down with the coronavirus. And just literally kind of this trickle effect of just, just kind of things manifesting in itself in just that one night.
Exactly. We go from Wednesday night to where, we're just kind of taking precautions, not having fans in the arenas, to where by Thursday night, after the Gobert and Mitchell cases have been confirmed, along with that official from the Colonial Athletic Association who worked the tournament and then was found to have the coronavirus, where basically everything on the sporting calendar for the foreseeable future is canceled. I mean, I haven't seen anything impact the world of sports in terms of, off-field type stuff since, 9/11?
Yeah. And you think about this time of the year, what are the 3 major, maybe even 4 major sporting events that you think of? NCAA tournament, you think about opening day in baseball, you think about the Masters, and then you think about the Kentucky Derby. And at least as of right now, we know 3 of those are not happening anytime soon.
Exactly. One of them's not happening at all.
The NCAA tournament's been both men and women's have been just canceled,
along with every other winter sport and spring sport championship for the rest of this academic year. Now, personally, I thought the NCAA was a little hasty in canceling all the spring sports this early, but we can get to that later. But MLB opening day was right around the corner, and in some markets, that's like a national holiday. Cincinnati shuts down for that day.
Yeah, I mean, to be a baseball fan, 162 games to think about. you'd have to be a diehard fan to follow your team, even as much as I love baseball. But opening day is just that special. And I remember working as a security guard in Yankee Stadium about 6 or 7 years ago. And it's maybe like 12 noon. And you see like fathers and with their kids and, families coming out. It's just like it's that one particular day outside of their team winning a championship. That's the biggest day, like
on the baseball calendar.
Exactly. And to think that that's not going to happen, to think that, the NCAA tournament, I don't know, I might be a little bit just not educated about this, but has the tournament ever been canceled, ever?
Not since it started in 1939.
No? Oh, well, first for everything, but wow, it's just like, and to think just like all these kind of things are just happening. It's just like, when I first heard about the coronavirus, 2-3 months ago, it was kind of like one of those things like, oh, wow, that's kind of a silly name to give a virus. It's like, it rhymes with the beer and just that and the other.
It makes you think of the beer shits.
Yeah, and then you also kind of think of like, okay, well, I remember, again, swine flu. I remember SARS. I remember, it was bird flu.
Yeah, the avian flu, yeah.
Yeah, and you think, okay, this is kind of just going to go away after a while. And then you start to hear more and more and more, and then you start to see how it kind of became a pandemic. It just went from China to Italy, and now it's just like... And now it's come here, 47 deaths here.
As of the recording of this podcast.
Right, and is it 47?
Yeah.
And now you see how it's affecting traveling.
Yep.
You see how it's affecting hospitality. You see how it's affecting sports. It's just like one of those things like I honestly could say I never saw this coming, and it's quite shocking.
And it's causing people to panic. I was at a grocery store about an hour before we started recording, and they're changing their hours. They have items you can't find anywhere. I mean, good luck finding toilet paper anywhere in Los Angeles County.
Yeah,
if you can, you basically stumbled on gold.
Yeah, I actually went shopping yesterday as well, and let's just say the express line at the local market that I normally go to, I mean, a 10-minute wait. I was literally on that line for an hour. And you see, even when you look at the people in the streets, like you see this as a different look. I mean, God forbid you cough. God forbid you look sick. I mean, it's just one of those things that now it's starting to become one of those things where it's like just any little kind of like, what is it? Just
any little sign that someone might have, flu-like symptoms.
Yeah, somebody's going to
panic.
Like even normal, like people like you just kind of randomly meet. Like you just shake their hands. They're just kind of like.
We're doing the elbow thing nowadays.
A little, not even a fist bump, but like an elbow kind of like, and it's, and like, I get it. I understand. And just to see how this thing has really kind of manifested into just a world pandemic, and we really don't know when this is going to get contained.
Exactly. It's the fear of the unknown that's kind of affected everything, and that's where I make the comparison back to 9/11. If you remember when that happened, sports were shut down for 6 days, and most of the reasoning behind that, one, because we didn't know if the terror attacks were going to end yet, and also because planes were grounded, nobody could get anywhere. That Saturday, the Washington Huskies were supposed to play the Miami Hurricanes at the Orange Bowl. And do you think buses are taking a football team from Seattle to Miami in 4 days? It would have been logistically impossible.
Yeah. I think the 9/11 comparison is, I mean, I see it, but 9/11 was more of a, obviously after the tragedy, more of a unifying kind of effect that it had on not just this country, but the world, at least for a week or two. Whereas this has just put people in a state of mind of just paranoia. Basically, it's like just obviously awareness. And again, I use myself as an example. I'm not a germaphobe. Like, I'll wash my hands when I use the bathroom, but I'm not one of those people like, just like, I'm not going to shake your hand because I don't know where your hand's been. There's germs everywhere. So now I've become self-aware where I use sanitizer. I basically try to wash my hands as much as I can just for my own safety.
Exactly. And I think we all are. I mean, I have this pink Bath and Body Works hand sanitizer that someone just gave me the other night. I'm like, I might as well use it. Completely off brand for us, but I might as well use it. But Again, it's the fear of the unknown here, because again, we're going to focus more on how it impacts the world of sports. We don't know how long this is going to last and how this is going to shape the rest of the 2020 sports calendar. This could last 1 month. This could last 3 months. It could be longer than that. So then we gotta have to explore the possibilities of, are the NBA and NHL playoffs even going to happen? Are we going to have the Masters at a later date? How much of the baseball season will be affected?
Yeah,
things like that.
Right, how the NBA is going to come back. Are they going to finish out the regular season? Are they going to go straight into the playoff format? You wonder certain teams that were on a particular role, how is it going to affect them going forward? Just things of that sort. It's again, it's just something that's very unprecedented, something that we've never seen in our lifetimes, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But first and foremost, obviously, when it's safe to play, and obviously the bigger picture is when it's, I guess society gets back to being or feeling safe about this particular virus. That's kind of what we're all praying and hoping for. As upset as a sports fan as I am that we're not going to have any of these things, I'd rather, and I'm very proud of the NBA first and foremost for being the first of the organizations to, basically say, hey, you know what, we're going to shut this down. Safety first above anything else.
Yeah, exactly. And the NBA has historically kind of been at the forefront when it comes to societal issues affecting sports. And of course, we all remember the whole Donald Sterling thing and everything like that. And it's especially been the case under Adam Silver. But, they took the forefront because, one of their 450 players came down with this. And these are some of the best conditioned athletes in the world.
Yeah. And again, as we mentioned, the irony of ironies, Rudy Gobert, who was mocking this particular thing, this particular virus in a sense, just 2 days prior. Now you're starting to hear more names, teammate Donovan Mitchell. I just read somewhere Charles Barkley apparently had some symptoms of the we don't know yet because obviously everything's pending.
He is self-quarantining.
Exactly. And, we see, I just actually read today one of the players from the XFL, which actually was another organization that shut itself down, tested positive. So we don't know. And it would be pretty ignorant to think that there's not some hockey players that haven't tested positive or, just even golfers in general. Because, this thing is airborne?
Neither one of us, as you can very clearly tell, are medical experts by any stretch of the imagination. I think it is. But again, I'm just spitballing here.
Again, maybe a cough, maybe obviously touching certain things and whatnot, which is why everybody's saying wash your hands, sanitize as much as you can, things of that sort. But
buy stocks and cleaning products.
Yeah, exactly. I still don't get the whole toilet paper thing.
I don't either.
Why is that flying off the shelves like at a massive rate?
Yeah, like I said, the local Ralph's I went to, the toilet paper and bath tissue aisle has been empty since Wednesday.
Yeah, and
this is Saturday that we're doing this.
Right, I don't get. Yeah, it's funny how the toilet paper and the those are like running low, but the vitamin section is just like filled to the top. I don't get it. Again, so those are some of the things that we will be covering, and with that being said, as we mentioned in the opening. All four, I guess three for now.
One of the other leagues with its business actually has not been affected, and quite frankly, in the sports world, can dominate the news cycle in the next few weeks. Granted, the NFL normally does that anyway, but even more so than it would competing against the NCAA tournament, MLB opening day, and the like.
Yeah, the only thing the NFL is going to be affected by is, actually the live draft, which is supposed to be in Vegas, which would have been a huge turnout. I mean,
my God, that would have been at least 100,000 people.
Now,
in the streets.
They haven't mentioned anything, so we don't want to obviously state or report anything that hasn't been factual as of yet. But you can only assume because personally, in my opinion, this thing is not going away anytime soon. So
yeah, unless there's a massive turn in society's reactions to things, and we get some news that there's been some kind of containment. I don't know how you can have the draft with all those people there in that setting there on the Vegas Strip. And you have to remember, the NFL draft up until about the 80s was a conference call. It didn't start going live to other cities until about 2015. So the NFL can conduct its business with the draft and with free agency next week with amidst this pandemic, if you will, and still set itself up for next year.
Yeah. But I mean, obviously, that's that remains to be seen, I should say. But it's going to be interesting. But I still really can't grasp the concept of the fact that we're not going to have an NCAA tournament.
That is, and this was shaping to be maybe one of the most exciting tournaments in years because aside from Kansas, it was really wide open.
Yeah, I mean, when you have teams like Dayton, Baylor,
San Diego State.
I know there was Florida State was actually ranked number 4. I actually read a report that the Florida Senate
officially proclaimed
crowned the Seminoles the national champion, and I thought. Only Florida would come up with something like that.
Well, I read on Twitter yesterday. Joel Klatt tweeted out, "Oh, so UCF can celebrate a national championship in basketball too."
Right,
which I thought was funny.
Can I proclaim myself like I don't know the heavyweight champion of the world right now? Since we're doing self proclamations, I mean,
can you get that passed through the California State Legislature?
Probably not, but still, the Florida Senate they passed. They passed
the fact that they use taxpayer-funded time and money and resources to discuss this. Now, granted, they pass resolutions and stuff like that all the time, but it's just what are you thinking, Florida? You got a bigger mess on your hands.
Yeah. Anyway,
and just being Florida,
I just thought that was a bit funny and disturbing at the same time. And when I read that at I think it was like 7 a.m. this morning, I was just like, oh God, like please, why is this even news? Anyhow,
because we don't have any other sports news right now.
True. I guess you just have to come up with anything that you can. But just the fact that even spring training, Major League Baseball, I mean, it will have an opening day, but it's just going to be pushed back 2 weeks as of now, from what we know. But,
and if I'm a betting man, I'm thinking it might be longer.
I'd put some money on that bet. Yeah. I definitely see it being pushed a little bit further back, maybe perhaps in May. But again, nobody has a crystal ball, can't predict what's going to happen. But just the way this virus has just kind of taken over everything, it's hard to see that any of this kind of being resolved anytime soon.
Well, again, there's no blueprint for this. There's no precedent. We haven't had something like this impact not just the sports world, but society in general, like I said, in our lifetimes. So, again, this could be 1 month, this could be 3 months. The best case scenario in all this is that dead period that we typically have from mid-June to about August 1st, in between when the NBA and NHL finals end and then when the NFL training camp begins, that month and a half dead period is simply moved up on the sports calendar. And then we're looking at a great summer of activity with the NBA and NHL bumping right up against when the NFL training camp is going to start. That's our best case scenario.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting to see. Again, we'll just wait and see how everything's going to play out. I know the NBA has given 30 days, I guess, from Wednesday or maybe...
From Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah, so 30 days to kind of see where, I guess, the kind of what effects or what trickling effects of this virus as it continues to, obviously, as we see anytime if you open up anything on the news or even if you look anything up on your phone as far as regarding the diagnosis, and it's just every day it just continues to grow and grow and grow even more. So I guess they're going to wait and see approach. And again, tip my hat off to the NBA for being the first to do it. I mean, the NBA, again, has always been the most proactive of them.
Right.
Obviously, they're a global brand. So for them to kind of just, basically know, hey, let's just shut this down. We have to get... we have to do what's best for the league. Obviously, I'm assuming that they kind of found out about the Rudy Gobert thing prior to the shutting down.
You didn't hear how that went down?
No.
Literally, one of the trainers for Oklahoma City went out to the officials, ran out seconds before they were supposed to tip off.
Yeah, that I remember hearing. So, okay.
But it's interesting to see how the different leagues are handling this, right? The NBA is taking their wait-and-see approach. After 30 days, they had about maybe a month left in their season.
Right, and then they were going to play without fans. That was kind of their outlook of it, was that the fact that, because I remember it was Golden State against another team. I think it was Brooklyn Nets. Golden State versus Brooklyn Nets. They were going to play in an empty stadium.
Right, they were going to play in the empty arena.
Empty arena, I'm sorry, stadium arena. But they were going to play in an empty arena, and that would have just been weird. I mean, just...
Well, the censors would have definitely had to have been working overtime that day.
But yeah, and just so, the fact that they were the first to do it, and you saw how other organizations followed. NHL, I believe, was the second to just kind of...
Yeah, what the NHL did was kind of weird. What they have already pledged to pay their players their last 3 regular season checks that they're supposed to get, because the regular season was supposed to end in early April, I think around like April 4th or 5th. And what I think they're going to do is they're going to just go ahead and cancel the rest of their regular season and then just go right into the playoffs. Again, that's just me being a betting man. And if any one of you sports gambling companies wants to sponsor this podcast, please feel free to hit us up at Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com. But
I saw a plug.
But anyway, so I think they'll go right into the playoffs, because you have to think of something else. NBA and NHL teams share arenas, and they're going to be. They also have other events at these places, like concerts, conventions, and things like that. So the logistical planning of all this, I think, is going to be the biggest hurdle in getting everything back going.
Yeah. Again, we'll see how everything kind of plays itself out. But the only thing that we can state that's a fact is just none of this is just going to happen anytime soon. I mean, 30 days, you'd like to think that, but I'm thinking maybe 90.
Yeah, that's a lot of the prevailing rhetoric I'm hearing out there. But again, it's the unknown. And of course, the NCAA, in their infinite wisdom and grandiose, awesome decision-making, went ahead and canceled all of the championships for not just the winter sports, but the spring sports as well. I mean, couldn't they have at least waited till, I don't know, sometime around May 1st, seen how things were, seen what the landscape was, and then see if they could have, their tournaments in some modified form?
Well, I mean, maybe, and I'm very much a harsh critic of the NCAA. I mean, I don't really like the way they do a lot of things in particular. Student athletes, number one, being the main criteria. I mean, but I don't, now that I've thought about it, I don't really have that big of an issue, just because we just don't know. So it's better just to kind of just go with a thought of, hey, you know what? Let's just, I guess my particular mindset is I don't think this is going to get rectified anytime soon. So it might take 4 months. It might take 6 months. You might as well just go with your gut feeling and just say, hey, you know what? Just cancel everything. Because, I mean, again, until we start seeing evidence of this virus being contained, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right, and I think we're really starting to see the effects of the world stopping. Again, we've already seen that in sports, and we're seeing that elsewhere in society. But again, it's just one of those things where, and I get the NCAA has a lot of moving parts in their decision-making that they have to do, right? Because when you're talking professional leagues, you're talking, 28 to 32 teams. Like the NFL, they have 53 players on an active roster, so you're talking about 2,000 jobs maybe, plus coaches, plus support staff and trainers and stadium workers and those sorts of things. But when you're talking the NCAA, right, you're talking hundreds of institutions with various people running them, some of them, being public universities being run by state governments, some of them being, private universities that are run outside of that realm. And you're thinking of tens of thousands of people that are affected. You have student athletes, you have coaches, you have the students that travel to these games, you have, volunteers, and a whole bunch of logistical stuff. So maybe there was something that went into that decision making to cancel all the spring championships that we're not going to be privy to, thinking it could be possibly an insurance related reason, but it just seems like they jumped the gun a little in canceling the rest of the year, unless there's something we don't know.
Which is always a factor. I mean, again, we're just two regular guys. We know as much as the news tells us. We can come up with our own opinions. We can assume a lot of different things, but we don't know. So perhaps, they're looking at it as far as a long-term thing. It's just better to just do this now and just, what is it? Better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, again, they could always resume this, you know, in the coming years, but it's always better to be safe than sorry, which I guess is kind of what they did in this particular. That's why I'm not going to jump all over them. I mean, there's a lot of things to jump on the NCAA about, but I don't think this is particularly one of those kind of things. And, you know, it's just disappointing. And I feel bad for the kids who, you know, especially the seniors who aren't able to kind of, although I did hear about them granting them maybe a few seniors. I don't know. Maybe it was just in college basketball, like they can kind of.
Yeah, I know a lot of the spring athletes are going to get eligibility waivers.
Yeah.
Which it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out because a lot of, specifically the spring athletes, right? They're not, you know, in revenue generating sports. Do they come back and play another year? Or do they graduate and go get a job? You know,
right.
I'll tell you right now, I was not a Division I or a Division anything NCAA
You athlete, don't say. So, oh, wow.
Well, these people can't see us. They can only hear us.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. I mean, does Tim sound like he's an athlete?
Hey, I have my one claim to fame that I will eventually delve on this show. I'm not going to do it on the pilot.
Okay, go ahead.
But you know, I don't know what it's like to be a Division I athlete, especially in a sport that doesn't generate revenue like football or men's basketball. So, you know, what kind of decisions do these kids have to make if eligibility waivers are granted? And again, if anybody who is in that scenario wants to chime in and tell us how that works, feel free. You can email us at Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com. You can also hit the show on Twitter at Reggie N Regis Pod. And tell us how that works, because you know that'd be a fascinating decision making process to have to look at when that comes about. Exactly,
and you know, and that's just one, and we also have the Masters, which is being postponed. I heard till May, which is you know, one of the. I mean, I guess that's not too bad in a sense. It's just if it's pushed back a month, I guess it's not really gonna. But it's still. I mean, when you think of. And for our like golf fans out there, when you think of the Masters is the Super Bowl of the golf tournaments. So it not being in April, it's kind of like a bit weird.
Yeah.
But again, I guess that's not the worst thing. And we haven't heard anything about the Kentucky Derby potentially being postponed or canceled. But I would imagine that
a decision's going to have to be made on that fairly soon.
Yeah. And again, it's just kind of, you know, like it's funny how things can change in 1 week. Like how... basically, and you know, things weren't necessarily getting better because when you started hearing, especially let's just use the NBA as an example, stating that, oh, well, they're probably going to start playing games without fans in the arena, or how you heard some players were just like autograph sessions. They were just kind of like, we're not about it, and just things of that sort. And it was just like, oh, okay, like, there's something that's obviously building as far as just the awareness and concern, which, you know, I don't blame anybody for. But when you see just where our mindset was a week ago compared to now, it's just completely two different levels.
Yeah, and, you know, here's something to think about. Back 2 months ago in January when we unfortunately lost the great Kobe Bryant, like, I thought to myself, there is no way there will ever be a bigger sports story in 2020 than this, right? Because, I mean, we're talking about a guy whose brand is top 10 in NBA history and was a global icon. It's like, this is going to be the sports story of the year for sure. And then the coronavirus happens.
Yeah.
In other words, 2020 needs to end already.
Yeah, and I believe LeBron put that as a tweet, Thursday night?
It was earlier this week. He's
Thursday, I believe it was, and I'm in the same boat. On that fateful or just January 26th day, it was kind of like, oh wow, like man, the year just started. It's just like, what's going on, and you know, you hear about that, and you're thinking, wow, this is pretty much going to be like the lowest point of just the sports year, and now you see this, and it's like, I don't know if it's the saddest. It's definitely not the saddest, but it's definitely the biggest.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, and obviously, the thing about this is we don't know how it's going to play out. We have no idea. We have no idea if the NBA is even going to restart in May or June. I mean, again, something could happen a week from now that's going to be like, oh, wait, okay, it's getting worse, not better.
Exactly. And again, it's the fear of the unknown. That's why I made the 9/11 comparison. We didn't know exactly how all that was going to play out until, days later. But even then, everything was only shut down for 6 days. And that was more due to, logistics. Here, everything's shut down for an indefinite period of time. We don't know how long. And everything all happened very quickly. The XFL basically had to, cancel the rest of its season. The virus actually took it out this time rather than its own incompetence back in 2001.
Wow. I mean, apparently the XFL is doing pretty well too. I mean, the ratings were pretty strong. It looked like a legitimate fun game to watch. I watched a little bit of it. I believe I was next to you.
Right.
A couple of times. I don't know if I really paid too much attention to it, but I was kind of like that. I like some of their ideas. It looked like a good brand of football. Look, the head coach, Bob Stoops, you had Jerry Glanville.
Hal Mummy was involved.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, oh, look at some of these great names from the past. I was just like, okay. Yeah, but...
I hope they come back next year, and I think they will.
Yeah.
Assuming everything with the coronavirus is done by that point.
Exactly.
Hope it is.
Like even look, I grew up a big wrestling fan. They're even talking about shutting down WrestleMania.
Oh, there's no way they'll be able to have WrestleMania.
Yeah,
because that's typically right around Final Four weekend,
right?
And that's about a little less than a month from now.
Yeah, in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah. And of course they do it in outdoor stadiums now. But again, you can't have WrestleMania without fans. That's not something you can do.
Exactly. Again, when we talk about the Super Bowl of certain things, I mean, that's an iconic event.
Now, granted, there was the one time back in 1999 when they had the empty arena match between Rock and Mankind that aired as a Super Bowl halftime show that was funny as hell. But that's the kind of thing you can only do as a gimmick if it's planned out.
Exactly. Not the biggest event of your particular industry of that year.
Yeah, because having 70,000 fans there is what makes WrestleMania.
Right. And again, it's not to say that WrestleMania or anybody who works in that particular industry has mentioned it, but I just find it hard to believe that it's going to go on. Seeing what we've seen transpire from basically every single organization, basically just anything in general. It's just not safe to just have that kind of, that amount of people in that particular environment just all together, just when we haven't even gotten to a point where we've been able to contain this virus. It's just not a good idea. I mean,
and even then, how many people do you think would go to something like this because of all the fear that's out there and all the uncertainty?
Oh, I would. There's a significant drop off. I think I would honestly say maybe cut in half.
Oh, more than that.
You think so?
More than that. You're going to have some diehards out there. Don't get me wrong, but an event like that also has conventions surrounding it and things like that, and all those events that aren't going to go on. And there are a lot of volunteers and workers in the Tampa area that aren't going to get their paychecks from working the event or the local bars and businesses. So those people are going to be affected. And I will give a shout out to Giannis Antetokounmpo, Zion Williamson, and some others in the NBA. Mark Cuban, who've pledged to cover the salaries of the arena workers for the lost games for the time being.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm glad you brought that up. We're as fans talking about just basically we're not going to have a tournament, we're not going to have the Masters, we're going to have spring training pushback. But you also think about the individuals who actually that's their livelihood, security guards, convention center workers, and just like just the more you think about it, the more it's just like it's unreal. It's just like, oh wow, like here it almost made me feel kind of bad because it's just like, oh well, wow, like people are losing their livelihood because of something that, they didn't do, something that they couldn't control. And again, props to those particular individuals, Cuban and Zion and Giannis, for at least, and you hope more players. And there's probably more players.
There have been some others. Yeah. I just forgot who they were right now.
And, just for basically stepping up and assisting those who need that kind of support, at least for the time being. And again, wow, it's still unreal to me. Like, it's still unreal. And basically, you're starting, day by day, you're starting to see more and more, and you're starting to learn more and more about just kind of like just the effects of everything. And it's just like, it's unprecedented. I mean,
We are living in very, very strange and unfamiliar times.
And, with that said, eventually things will get back to normal.
Yeah, and again, if the best case scenario happens, we have the best summer in sports history.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be a weird summer, but like anytime if you want to just jam pack a bunch of sports together, I'm like, hey, I don't have any issues with that.
Hey, well, you remember when the 2011 NFL lockout happened with their CBA, right?
Right.
Remember when that got resolved? That was one of the best free agency periods I can ever remember.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
There were signings left and right, and they were starting training camp the very next week.
Very true. Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting to see how people would have to get acclimated to new environments. And while I'm sure there will be a lot of chaos once sports does get going, another question that can be brought up in all this is what do the sports networks do in between now and then?
Wow. Actually, we did talk about this prior to the recording. I believe you brought up just show ESPN Classic, which
exactly. If I'm
thought was a great idea.
If I'm ESPN, and they're starting to do this with some of the games that happened this year. If I'm ESPN, I just show great classic games and events from the past. I mean, it can be from this past year. It could be from the 70s and 80s, anything in between. I basically just turn the channel into ESPN Classic until everything normalizes out and we get sports back.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the meantime, it's just, to be honest with you, like what I thought about was just kind of like, it's good. Like, you could always watch YouTube or just things of that sort, but I would just kind of focus on the bigger picture and just get my updates on, okay, is this starting to get better? Is, is there at least a vaccine that, people can get? I think my mind's going to be preoccupied with just the overall bigger picture of just like, hey, I just want to see things get back to normal.
Exactly. And don't get me wrong. That's the prevailing notion in life. But you have to remember what sports has always been. It's been a way to get away from everyday life. So, if these sports networks can, show, those great moments that have made sports what they are in the interim when there's nothing else really going on, that's what I would do if I'm them. But who knows? It remains to be seen, like, what kind of decisions are going to be made on that front, because this is new territory for them too.
Yeah. I mean, it's, again, new territory for everybody. But we just hope and pray, the people who need help, obviously with the effects that it's having on their work life, or just the individuals who unfortunately have, been diagnosed with this, horrible kind of just, I don't say dreaded disease, because I mean, apparently it's just from what I've understand, and I'm just starting to learn more and more about it. It does affect elderly people a lot more. So, you just hope that we just become a little bit more aware as just individuals of just like making sure just we don't expose others, just by doing what you can.
Exactly.
Washing your hands, just like, just sanitizing your hands, just, just like not
deliberately breathing in people's faces
or coughing, as people do, and just, just be a little bit. And if you do have it, just be quincy, just stay home, just like try not to like just do things to like just expose others to it, because you never know who is gonna get exposed to it. It might not affect you at 34, 35, but
yeah, exactly.
It could affect your grandmother who's 80.
Well, actually, all my grandparents are gone. But
I mean, you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'll put it this way. Reggie and I, we're both in our 30s. Even if we do come down with this, I think we're going to end up being okay.
Yes.
It's going to be like, cold flu-like symptoms. You have to stay home for a couple of weeks. But I'll put it this way. If my nieces who were just born in June, if they come down with it, I'm worried. I'd be worried about them, obviously.
Exactly.
But one last thing one last point I think we can touch on that we haven't discussed yet is how this uncertainty is going to affect our podcast.
Well, yeah, we actually we talked about that a little bit on Thursday. I sent you a text, and we have to be a little bit creative.
We've had this idea of launching a sports themed podcast since about the beginning of last NFL season, and we kept putting together ideas of episodes we could do, topics we wanted to cover, approaches we could take to it, and of course, the first official episode we're doing happens to be at the time when all the sports are being shut down. So, as Reggie said, we have to get very creative in how we're gonna. In the topics we're going to cover and how we present things. And this is where you, the listeners at home, might be able to help us out because, we want to stay sports themed, but there's a lot of directions we can go with that. So, find us on Twitter at Reggie N Regis Pod. That's REGGIE, the letter N, Regis, REGIS Pod. Or you can email us at Reggie N Regis Podcast at gmail.com. And if you have topics you want us to cover, right? Say there's an old classic game you want us to go long form on. Maybe there's a great team that we can talk about that existed, or a dynasty or something like that, or a personality we can dive into. This is where you, the listeners at home, can kind of help mold this show into what it's going to be.
Yeah, actually, thank you for putting that out there. So eloquently as well. I was just like, wow. I was almost like a fan. I was just like, oh, well.
I'm not as dumb as I look. Those of you
you look pretty dumb.
Yeah, those of you who actually know me know
Somebody once said you look like Pat Riley, and I was just like, what?
My hair must have been really slicked back that day.
Yeah, it was really greasy. But just give us send us any ideas that you might have. Just if anything, just to make the show better, or like more to your liking. We're open for anything, and with that being said, anything else you want to say, brother?
Well, I think this is obviously our first episode. So again, listeners at home, if you want to tell us that we did great, awesome. If you want to tell us we suck, that's also awesome. But again, we're trying to make this the best show it can be. And of course, we got thrown the curveball with the coronavirus that we just went long form on now. And we are going to need a little bit of help from you guys coming up with some ideas of topics we can cover in the interim. Because as we have been stating this entire show, we don't know how long the interim is.
Yeah. And, it's content is everything. And, you know what? I guess in the meantime, we still have NFL free agency. We're just going to get updates on certain things.
We could do our own mock draft.
Yeah, Mel Kiper, Thomas Shea.
Yeah.
Or do you want me to be Mel Kiper? Just like
I've got the hair grease. I've got to be Kiper.
You got to be Kiper. So you just disagree with everything that I just say, and then just go
and make you look like the genius.
Yeah. Anyway, but so basically, just stay tuned. Hopefully, this is episode 1. It's an unfortunate episode 1, but it's just kind of a reality of things, and that's what we hope to bring. The content we hope to bring. It's just kind of like no matter good or bad. But this is
This is the Reggie N Regis Podcast. We hope to see you guys next week when we go into NFL free agency and kind of look to see how the new players and new faces and new places are going to play out. We can speculate on that. But yes, please join us next week. We're going to be on YouTube. Again, hit us up on Twitter at Reggie N Regis Pod. Hit up, email us, Reggie N Regis Podcast, gmail.com. And we will hopefully see you guys next week.
Yeah, and thank you again for listening. Have a good one.